Hello. Go ahead.
Greetings and salutations to Autist Circle number 11, Albert Bierstadt. I'm your co-host, the Bleach Demon, joined by Fat Dave, also known as Total Blackout Painting. And yeah, we're going to
Hello.
get into an American artist. Well, German-born, but still considered an American artist.
Yeah. So today we are doing something's wrong with my avatar thing. It's not showing. Of course, it wouldn't be right if it didn't have a. It wouldn't be right if things weren't. If come on, I'm just waiting for it. Maybe it'll load in the next scene. If not, I'll have to reload that. But of course, technical difficulties. Today we are talking about Albert Bierstadt. He is the one of the premier early American painters, pre-Civil War painters. He was once lauded as one of the greatest painters in America during his life. He did large landscapes and really his work really highlighted the American West.
Mhm.
So we'll jump in here. I just want to look in the chat and see who everyone we got here. We got Formalin over on your channel.
Nice, welcome.
Bez, LGM, and Malox are here. My Discord thing is not showing you on my it's not showing you on my screen. Stupid thing, of course. So anyhow, we're just gonna leave that, and I'll leave that there, and we'll jump into some things here. Before we jump in on Beirstatdt, I just wanted a few things, talk about art movements really quickly. A brief aside on art movements. So art movements, turn down the music a little bit. An art movement can be defined by several things. We've talked about a lot of art movements here. Mostly, we've spent most of our time talking about the Baroque period. But through the Baroque period, there were several art movements. But mostly, we look at we just look at the Baroque art as an art movement. Although there was a lot more to it than that. But on the screen, I've got this little graph here, and it just shows how we look at the acceleration of art as it gets closer to us. And it's not necessarily that art was so much more revolutionary or has evolved so much then. It's just that, we look at history as a flat stack. Mm-hmm. We flatten it out and we don't break it out as much as we do now. So
I think
because
it's something that should be expressed where we're going in and being very myopic about certain time periods and art movements. The closer we get to the modern age, which is just, I think the recency bias, where yes, there's so much more. Where if you went back to say, the Baroque period, you'd have the Dutch masters versus the Italians versus other sub movements that just get jammed into what we now call Baroque.
Yep, absolutely, because there was definitely the Caravagistes, and then the Flemish Baroque, the Flanders artists, and then even they were distinctly different from Rembrandt. Mm-hmm. And so, but they were all fell under that Baroque umbrella, as we look at it. But art, so I was saying, an art movement can be defined by a bunch of different things. So it's a shared ideology or style or geography in the terms of the Flemish artists, a time period. That's how we look at the Baroque artists, and a lot of the artists of the older times. We just classify them based on the time period. Culture, because of course there were Dutch, there was the Flemish artists, the Flemish Baroque. There was a big segment of the Dutch in Utrecht who were disciples of Caravaggio. Mm-hmm. So there was all sorts of stuff like that. Or even a cultural event, because a lot of brutalist art and architecture comes out of how they came out of Soviet Russia.
Right.
So they're not the only things that can define an art movement. And I'll just read what I have written here.
You took the time to write it. You might as well.
I know, right? The changing of art movements are generally indicative of a cultural or historical shift of some sort. And even though they're not recognized, the art styles of people like Rubens or even Bosch never truly died out, and they never even actually stopped being practiced. They just fell out of favor with the broader cultural whims, and they have their resurgences from time to time. And if you actually study it, you can see the resurgences of different influences as they go through modern movements, like Bosch's influence on Dali.
Mm-hmm.
And art movements can be generational. They can last several years or several generations, or they can be small and last a couple of years and only have a couple of members. But they just have a shared interest, and that's what the Hudson River School that we're talking about. And the Hudson River School is a school of art that was it was really originally founded by Thomas Cole, and we will talk more about that when we get into Beirstadt's life. But I just wanted to talk about art movements here really quick. And so now we'll move into Beirstadt's life. So Albert Bierstadt, he was born in 1830 in Solingen, Prussia, which is now Germany, near Düsseldorf.
And
his family emigrated. Oh, go ahead.
It's actually one of the premier cutlery cities in the world. They made bayonets for Germany during the First World War and into the Second, and you can still get fantastic razors from them. So,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
which to me speaks of the family probably came from some sort of artisan class without even knowing, you know, his
Yep.
whole family history. So
Yeah, exactly. His father was a cooper. Yeah, so when he was 2, they immigrated to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And his father was a cooper. And at that time, a cooper was a person who did, they built barrels. They did staving for barrels and stuff like that.
Yep.
It was because New Bedford at that time was like a whaling center. It was an incredibly big port. It was really,
Someone wants to talk to you about painting.
tell them I'll come back later. It was a really big port for whaling and shipping and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
so having someone as a cooper would mean lots of the trade, especially up there. Plus, there's probably brewing, whaling supplies. Since molasses was a big thing up there, that's another use for barrels and other coopered items.
yeah, and so he was not he didn't come from a poor family. He came from a wealthy family, not wealthy, but a well-to-do family,
Mm-hmm.
and a very kind of an artisan family, an artistic family. So, and his 2 older brothers, Charles, who was born in 1819, and Edward, who was 1824, quite a few years his seniors, were both pioneers in photography. They pioneered stereo photography. They had a shop in New Bedford, and I think they had a shop in New York City also, where they sold photographs and photography equipment. And when Albert would travel and come back, he would bring his photos to the shop, and they would sell his photos. They would replicate his photos and sell them in the shop.
And
he also,
just for those that don't know, stereo photography is where you could basically set 2 almost identical images up in a little viewer and get a three-dimensional image, which was like the height of entertainment for a while. For
Right. Yeah, it was a really interesting thing because they had two cameras the camera had two lenses that were 5 centimeters or 6 centimeters apart. And so it was just enough to give it a kind of a stereo look. Um, but yeah, so his brother, so Charles and Edward were really into that. Charles Edward was also he was one of the early pioneers of color photography back then too. So yeah, so they were really, which is a technical skill, but also requires a lot of artistry, you know. But really, his brothers were just very technically talented. And Albert himself was an incredibly talented and driven person. Young man, he taught himself drawing. He didn't have any formal art classes until he went to Düsseldorf in 1851. But prior to that, he worked with his brothers, and he advertised his services as a drawing instructor in New Bedford. So he was not he was not a man of small talents before deciding to take up painting. So yeah, in 1851, he started working with oil paints, and decided he really liked that, and he liked it so much that he decided he should go get formal training. And then, given he had German roots, he figured Dusseldorf would probably be a good place to go. So in 1853, he traveled to Germany, to Dusseldorf, at the German, the State Art Academy there, Dusseldorf. He didn't. He worked with a lot of famous artists and kind of studied under famous artists there. One of whom was Emanuel Leutz, who is the artist he painted Washington crossing the Delaware, which is, of course, an amazing, iconic American painting. And then also he met up with a guy called Worthington Whitridge, who was a Hudson River School painter. And so the Hudson River School, we'll jump into that now, founded by Thomas Cole. It was considered to be the first truly American art movement. One that wasn't borrowed from European. It was completely organic. And Thomas Cole really enjoyed painting his landscape of his home, which was the Hudson River Valley. And he's got some very famous paintings as well of American landscapes and idealized American landscapes that are just incredibly beautiful. They're the kind of paintings that make you they make you long for a place you've never been, like you've seen that place and it looks it's such a beautiful, striking, stark beauty that it's like, man, you're in awe of the power of nature in those places. And so, anyhow, the Hudson River School focused on landscapes, obviously. And they really focused on creating sublime pieces of the American wilderness, pieces that did give you that feeling of awe and wonder, that gave you a sublime feeling about the country you live in and about the world and nature. It's kind of it's a meditative thing in a way.
and just kind of in general with the school of art with the Cole and the Hudson School, it's not just idealized as like fictional, but it's like the perfect capturing of like the that one moment in time of your favorite landscape. It's just very evocative. It's very visceral, but it's also
Yes.
not so alien that you couldn't actually see that. You just have to be the right day at the right time, kind of thing. But
Absolutely. I think visceral is a very good word for it. It's a very good, visceral is the right word. Because some of these really did grab you viscerally. Another thing that is kind of defines the Hudson River Valley School is the inclusion of they like to include signs of human activity, and whether it was like an Indian encampment or and in some places and you'll see in some of these paintings they're so small that you can barely see them, but you can still see them. And the inclusion of humanity in the painting in a way to show humanity in harmony with it, but also to remind you that humanity is there.
Yeah, because and it's kind of a nice blend of it's a virgin wilderness slowly being conquered by man, but not in a making it disgusting and industrialized and run down. It's more small interactions of human encroachment rather than conquest outright.
Right. And and that the Hudson River Valley School and their works, the works of their artists have been it's had a really interesting effect in that it showed it showed the beauty of the West, and in doing so attracted people to the West. So it attracted people to go to to expand, to go for westward expansion, right? But then once those places started disappearing, those paintings really fueled a mindset towards conservatorship and conservation, where it's like, instead of like, hey, these are our places to inhabit, it's like, these are our places to protect.
Yes.
Yep. And so it was kind of really a double-edged sword, but it's been yeah, so it's been a very positive thing for America and American history. That art movement has. So off the art movement, so while he was in Düsseldorf, he painted a lot, and he sent a lot of his paintings back home. And what he would mostly paint was landscapes of the the Alps, and go. He'd take trips around Europe, in the in the area, and take photos and sketches, and then paint those, and then send them home and sell them. And his paintings were so good, and some of his paintings were actually attributed to his teachers, because they didn't think that he could have done it. They're like, this is so good, there's no way you could have done it. And so they said, well, your teacher must have done it. And he's like, no, I didn't. I did it. And it came down to where he actually had to get a letter from his mother, because it was a copy. One of them was like a copy of a painting he'd already done, something like that. And so he got a letter from his mother saying like, no, this is totally his painting. I already have a copy similar to it. And so he was a super talented artist, all the time. Like, he grew up talented, and he was very driven and prolific. So in 1857, he returned from Europe. He was a drawer. He drew shit before he became a painter. He was a sketch artist and stuff. He gave drawing lessons, and so he made amazing sketches of the wilderness, of the European landscape. And so when he came back to America, he turned those sketches into paintings and sold them, and started making money. And then working with his brothers and stuff. And he sold a large Swiss landscape, or he had a large Swiss landscape that was actually displayed at the National Academy of Design. And then by 1860, he was actually elected as a member of the National Academy of Design. So in 1859, he joined a railroad crew with Colonel Frederick W. Lander.
Well, I have to ask, with it being 59, was it railroad surveyor or road? because there's the push for the national road at that time.
It was road building.
Okay.
So this was a road building expedition. And he went along as a kind of a documenter. He wasn't going along as like a guy to build anything. And of course, this was just an expedition anyways. There was nobody really building anything.
Mm-hmm.
They were just scouting out the land and shit, figuring out where they could do it. So basically there weren't roads. They set off across the west because they were the ones going to make the roads,
Mm-hmm.
which is to me that stirs something in me, to that pioneering spirit. I think that's something that probably deep down touches a lot of dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Like that notion of like, there are no roads, I'm gonna make the road. I'm gonna make the road there. And that's what these guys were doing. They're like, we're gonna figure out how to make this road. And so he went along to document it. He brought a couple of cameras. He brought a stereoscopic camera, and he brought wet plate photography, which was really new at the time, and gave better images. So while they were this is one of the images he took of where is it? It's an image he took of a Sioux warrior, or it wasn't Sioux. I have it written down here. Shoshone. Sorry,
Okay.
This was a Shoshone warrior in 1859. This is a picture he took of a Shoshone warrior in Wyoming.
Okay.
Back then, which is like a really that's a window to the past. That go ahead.
And it's given where it is, and the Shoshone were more friendly towards the Americans, because they're like, we can defeat some of our enemies because we can get them to be our friends and push make our enemies enemy of the white man too. So they were a more shall we say forward thinking people, especially was it Chief Washaki, I think.
I didn't look into that. That's your.
I know a wee bit about it.
This is your bailiwick here.
Yeah,
This is why I bring you. This is why we come along together.
Exactly. And given the fact that it's such an early photograph, because one of the things people get hung up on is the don't take a picture of the Indians kind of thing. That actually came because of the commercialization of the ghost dances in like the 1880s, 1890s, and trying to that became a whole different thing. But at this period, so 1860s, it's like, yeah, hey, would you mind posing on your horse, looking off in the distance? And like, yeah, okay, give him a couple of pelts or a bottle of whiskey or trade something, and it's probably I'll do whatever you want as long as I don't get embarrassed.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I think this is amazing. Like, it's an amazing thing back in history, to look back at that. And so when they got done with that expedition, they returned in 1860 to New York, and he rented a studio in a building with a bunch of other artists. It was called, it was 10 something crap. I had it written down. But anyhow, the other people in that building. So he showed up, like Winslow Homer was there, and then Wetridge was there also. So we met back up with him, and it was kind of like one of those, I think like a modern art collective studio kind of place, right? A studio where there's a bunch of artists, not like a workshop, like Jordan's or anything like that, because they all had individual studio spaces, but it was a building where there's all these studios and there's all these artists in there. And so in 1863, after he had tons of successful expeditions. His works were, and we'll look through them, and and I'll say what they, I'll point out the critical acclaim at the time, but he was a very well respected and admired painter. and his work is phenomenal, and was thought so at the time as well, and especially because of the size and all the stuff. His work was awe-inspiring, and people treated it as such, and they treated him very, very well as a result of it. But in 1863, after a bunch of expeditions, he wanted to go back west again. And so then he went west with Fritz Hugh Ludlow, with writer Fritz Hugh Ludlow. And when he hit the Yosemite Valley, he said, I quote here, "We are now here in the Garden of Eden, I call it, the most magnificent place I was ever in. I employ every moment painting from nature. We camp all together, get no news, and do not care for any, for we are perfectly happy with the fine scenery, trout, ducks, deer, etc." So, to me, that's really indicative of or evocative of that expansionist feeling, or that explorer, not expansionist, but an explorative feeling, right? Like to see something that stirs. I think that's what all people really search for in life, whether they admit it or not, is you want to find something that stirs you deep down. And nature is one of the easiest things to do that with,
And when we get into the art, I think it's very evocative of just how enamored he was with those parts of America. And yeah, having traveled to some of those places myself, I can't blame him.
Yeah. And so after that expedition, he came back and started making paintings and sketches based off of his works to much success. In 1869, from 69 to 67, he was in Rome, or not Rome, goddamn, retarded. He went to Europe, or he met with Queen Victoria and the Prince of Wales. He was also inducted into the French Foreign Legion by Napoleon. That was in 1867.
I would presume that's Napoleon the Third, just given the time frame.
Yeah. And in 1866, he married Rosalie Osborne Ludlow, who was the wife of Fritz Hugh Ludlow. But they still got along afterwards, apparently. She's a very beautiful woman. I'm in a picture over here. And he had a deep love for her. And we'll see that expressed through his paintings. Fritz Hugh Ludlow, as a side note, in 1957, he wrote a book called The Hashish Eater, which is considered to be one of the earliest, drug books, quote unquote. So detailing his experiences on hash. So
So no wonder she decided to go for another man.
Right. Yeah, probably. But in 1870, he returned, or in 1869, he returned back to America, and again had exhibitions and stuff. And in 1871, he went to the West the third time. This time on the new Transcontinental Railroad. And during that trip, he organized a buffalo hunt for the Grand Duke Alexis of Russia with Buffalo Bill Cody. It's just so wild. It sounds
nuts.
I know, right? It sounds like you're just making shit up. That didn't happen. No, yeah, that really happened. And his family, when he continued to be famous. In 1878, he was invited to the White House by the Hayes, the newly elected president, Rutherford B. Hayes. And then his star kind of started to wane a bit.
Mhm.
They traveled extensively. We were talking about this beforehand. Him and his wife traveled a lot. They spent a lot of time in the Bahamas. And it was because Rosalie had tuberculosis for a good part of her life. She had consumption. And so they would travel, like most people with tuberculosis. Like Doc Holliday went to Arizona
Mhm.
because of it.
Yep.
You know, they wanted to go to the warmer climates because they believed it helped. And man, even if it doesn't help, I can't think of a better place to be sick than the Bahamas anyways. Like being sick in the Bahamas, it's gotta kick ass over being alive and well in New Bedford, Massachusetts, right?
Or New York City.
Or New York City.
It's like gee, death's door in a sunny paradise or a sludgy hell. I mean,
Yeah. So but in 1893, his wife died. Rosalie finally succumbed to consumption. And then shortly afterwards, like because he was used to living a rich lifestyle, right?
mhm.
And I think this is a thing that happens with a lot of artists is because when they're working and they're selling art and stuff, they always have income coming in,
Mhm.
right? But when they're not, if they're not selling art, then they don't have income coming in. And I think a lot of artists don't plan for that necessarily. You know what I mean? I think a lot of artists just think they just they don't plan for the rain,
No.
right?
Yeah.
you spend so much time doing art that you're doing more grasshopper shit than ant shit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So when the winter comes, you're not always prepared for it. And I think that's kind of the case with like people like him and Rembrandt. Because they just had expensive tastes. And so at the end he had to sell like 150 of his paintings to satisfy creditors. And he died in 1902. He died, and he's buried next to his wife Rosalie and also his brother Edward in New Bedford. So that's the first half of the show, talking about the dude.
I
mean, and now we're gonna go through the art.
Finally, on an art stream, we finally talk about the art, not just the artist. Which, let's be honest, that dude lived one hell of a life.
He did, and I think that it's like his life is so interesting, and we have such a connection to it with American history. You know, like it's not like the Baroque art. Where like, yeah, I can kind of look at the Reformation as it is my history, you know, the Reformation and all that stuff. It is our history. But westward expansion is like this pioneer times. That's my history, you know. And I was raised LDS, and they put a lot of emphasis on pioneer times, of course, because that was such a big part, was moving back out west to Salt Lake and all that stuff. And so when I was a kid, I got it really, you know, I got a more fervent education about pioneer times than most children did. But it really, I'm very much enamored of it, you know, and and I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie. I loved that shit. Sorry, I love Little House on the Prairie. Up until they put when Shannon Doherty got on there, it started jumping the shark. There was a couple of them that, but anyhow, so to the painting here. Sorry.
Yeah. This
is the first
little teepee on the prairie, right?
Yes, right. This is the first painting we're talking about. This is the Rocky Mountains Landers Peak. So Landers Peak, named after the Frederick Landers, the colonel we talked about previously, who led the expedition here.
Yep. And having been in that part of the world myself a few times, yeah, not an inaccurate depiction of that particular area, which is south of Yellowstone, basically.
Yep. It's so this was painted in 1863. It's an oil on canvas. It's 6 feet by 10 feet. And so, like I said, these landscapes were huge. And it depicts Landers Peak in Wyoming, like I said. So this there's a few elements here that are really there's a few elements that are indicative of the Hudson River School, and then a few elements that are more indicative of Beirstatdt style.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the humans, you've got the people in here, which they're very well done. You know, this is a very interesting scene.
Mm-hmm.
Transposed in the nature, living in harmony with nature, just to show that this is it's untouched by Western man, but not untouched by humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it really shows a kind of harmony with nature. But then also one other thing that's really kind of Bierstadt's styles is the trees in the foreground. Trees creating a kind of they call it a proscenium, which is like a stage effect.
Okay.
So in the foreground is the people, and then you have this trees here creating a break, kind of creating a stage, like an opening for this beautiful waterfall back here. This is just a beautifully depicted waterfall, and the reflection of the waterfall in the water is so beautiful too.
Yeah, and that's something just worth noting. And just you've got that reflective surface, and it's not just there, but you can like see little elements where how to put it's like that. There's certain mirrors of like the teepees. If you look at the peaks on the left hand side, it's like that's almost a mirror image the way some of that's arranged.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And another thing that's it's indicative of the Hudson River School style, but also very indicative of Bierstadt style is the luminism in here. You know, the light highlighting the peaks here gives you this really divine light, but then also you have this like divine ray of sun, which you've been there, I've been there, been out in the hills, out in the mountains, and it's cloudy, and then all of a sudden this ray of sunlight cuts through and you can see it highlighting something, and it's just one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen.
Yep.
It's like God is spotlighting something for you to see, and that's what he's doing, is highlighting like the grandeur of these mountains in the background and everything. And then that ray of sun coming through and highlighting right here, while also with the shadow in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the whole scene is flooded. It's definitely flooding. It's highlighting a specific place, and it's highlighting this waterfall. So this was one of his this was a huge painting at the time for him. New York Times called it the finest landscape ever painted on this continent. And it really was one of the paintings that really wedged him firmly into the pantheon of great American artists, and premier artists at that time. So, we're going to jump to the next one here, which is the Storm of the Rocky Mountains of Mount Rosalie. So Mount Rosalie, which is now Mount Evans, of course, because he called it after his wife, Mount Rosalie. It was painted in 1866. It's this was one of his biggest paintings. It's 7 feet by 11 feet. And it's currently in the Brooklyn Museum in New York. And it was so large because it's a tribute to his wife. You know, it's a tribute to his love for her, you know, and I think showing the storm and the light, to me, speaks to having known women, the
Yeah.
potential tumultuousness of relationships with that, and so, like, and the storm could also be, she was sick for a lot of her life, and the storm could also have been symbolic of that.
Hmm.
um it's a very beautiful piece, and again, we have the trees,
Yeah. And
kind of in the foreground,
the
creating,
people with them not being intrusive.
yeah, like, and there's just some really great detail, you know because they're so tiny. The people hunting, like, you can see the natives down here hunting,
Yeah.
and then there's,
There's that little village off to the left.
yep, yep, and then there's this tiny, and it goes to show just the grand scale of this. um and man, what an awesome and amazing beauty.
Hmm.
Like, if you camped right there, and you woke up every day and got to look at that, like, and maybe that's because we've spent most of our time in terrible, crappy, like, city hellscape, urban hellscapes, or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatnot, um but I really do think that scenes like this, they they speak to people on a spiritual level.
I mean,
Because,
it's something where even if this wasn't a real place, you
yes,
could look at it and say, "I think I've been there," in your mind's eye, just because there's so many real elements. Even if you've never traveled the Rockies, but you could, like, in your heart of hearts, it's that, like, I think I've actually been here, kind of
right.
a awe.
I i fi- i figured out the word. It's nostalgic. You're
Yes.
nostalgic for a place you've never been,
Yep.
really. um you feel like this place calls to you. um Excuse me. So this was first shown at the New York Sanitary Fair.
Hmm.
Um,
It's an odd
and then,
name, but okay.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. And I didn't do a whole lot of looking in on that one. But then it toured around extensively because it's such a huge and beautiful painting. It really highlights the sublime power of nature,
Hmm.
because of how dwarfed humanity is in this. Like, humanity exists in this world, right? Humanity exists in this, but you are insignificant in the face of this storm and in the face of nature.
Mhm.
Um, so this was the New York Times called this, or is called a cathedral of light by some critics, and the New York Times called it the grandest painting ever executed by an American hand. So they were prone to flattery back then as well.
Some things never change.
Yep. So again, Storm in the Rocky Mountains and Mount Rosalie. It's a beautiful piece, and it was really, I think, done to highlight his maybe the awesome love he had for his wife. Um, and again, that's just me,
Mhm.
and I'm no expert. I'm just some dude.
Well,
So take with that which will.
I mean, every professional art critic is pretty much just some dude.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
and so with that, well, oh, go ahead,
no,
dude.
no, it's one of these pieces where, like, with so many of them, I'll go through and just stare at some of them later. But this one is like, all right, I need to figure out where I can get a print of this damn thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and fortunately, I mean, because it's all public domain, but they have, yeah, like, you can buy giant canvases and prints of
Hmm.
most of his work, and so just an amazing piece. And with that, we'll hop over to the next one, which is Among the Sierra Nevadas, which I think is probably, personally, I think is probably his most beautiful painting. Like this, There is a lack of people
Hmm.
in this. Like there's no humans in it. But uh it is such a glorious and um it's just such a grand and glorious sublime, like this is the sublime feeling, or the sublimeness of nature, the it's how it's hard to describe, obviously,
Yeah, I
as
mean
I'm stumbling over my fucking words.
it's the sheer awe of nature.
Hmm.
That's the closest I can come, and that's like, yeah, no, me speak English sometimes, I do.
Well, and then once you see this, you're like, oh, I understand why he was, I understand what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, these paintings weren't like, so these were all based on sketches, sketches of places where he had been. Um, so they're not, they're as realistic as they can be based on a sketch, but of course they're stylized in a bit.
Oh yeah.
And this one was painted in 1868. It is 6 by 10, and it's currently at the Smithsonian in DC.
Hmm.
He actually painted this in Rome while he was in Rome, based on sketches that he had.
Huh.
So, which is kind of crazy to think. Like shipping, like I couldn't ship. It costs so much to ship paintings over, like my little poster size paintings overseas. I couldn't imagine how much it costs to ship a 60 square feet of canvas. You know,
Yeah. And I
but they
guarantee it was like framed when it was shipped too, not just like rolled up and shoved in a tube of the time.
right, yeah, it was it's on a stretched canvas, so yeah. Um, But this one, of course, it has the trees up front, again, creating the proscenium. So you can, for the waterfalls and the mountains in the background, get my stupid cursor out of the way. So it shows a scene of deer
Mm-hmm.
drinking from a lagoon beneath in a range in the Sierra Nevadas, cascading water coming out of the mountainside, which waterfalls are beautiful.
Yeah, it just is.
And
It's like if you can't appreciate water falling over a cliffside somewhere, I don't want you in. Yeah, I don't want you on this planet. Go away.
right. So yeah, that's really that.
It's just
So he's got a lot of, just a ton of little details in here. We're gonna zoom in here as soon as there we go.
like the from the
So
ducks to like the little trees on the ridge out there. That's
yeah,
amazing detail.
so there's ducks. There's something really cool over here that I wanted to show you though.
Okay.
Under the rock here, there's a single trout.
Really?
Just under that rock there. Do you see the little rock under the left side? Right here. There's a little trout underneath the rock.
Oh, that's mind
It's a
blowing.
it's a cool little detail.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is a huge painting, but like he's depicted the trees out on the ridge. This waterfall it has a lot of detail in it for being so small. And then
I'm almost expecting to see like bighorn rams up there on the ridges.
right?
Actually, I think I might have found it. There's like these three little white specks that are in the wrong spot for. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to say that's what it is to make myself happy.
Yeah, it could very well be, I'm zoomed way in here because I got a really high res copy of it. So there's a ton of detail in the waterfall, ton of detail, and then the mountains have this like the light is just channeling through the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming through in such a way, it's just like a divine illumination emanating from the mountains. It's not even coming down, it's coming from the mountains.
Yeah.
And
and that's because I've seen what the Illuminate school or and
Mhm.
sub school of the Hudson River, and it's
Yeah.
that they do that a lot, but it is just so awesome to see that. It just
Mhm.
and the thing is, I have seen these mountain ridges act this way, where it's like you're down in a little valley and you look up and it's like the sun has just turned a spotlight on.
Right. It's oh yeah, and it's like we were saying either. It's like earlier, it's like God is just pointing something out to you.
Yeah.
And really, and I think this painting highlights really kind of his love for that area. And he poured a lot of love into this painting, and it shows. It's a beautiful painting with exquisite detail and it really captures um the grandeur of the American West as he saw it. Um, all right. So we're gonna kind of we got 9 minutes left, so we're gonna speed run through the last few. So the last one is the second to the last one, Puget Sound Coast. This is 1870 oil on canvas. It's another 6x10. This one's currently at the Seattle Art Museum. This was commissioned by Abiel Abbott Lowe, who is a shipping tycoon. He commissioned it for $8,000 at the time, which was nearly $200,000 in today's money.
Wow.
So he got almost $200,000 for this painting. And this was a painting so he had never actually been there.
Mhm.
It was based off of sketches, off of other people's sketches and other people's accounts. And so it kind of opened him up to criticism for a bit, because the critics were like, well, now you're just idealizing shit that you never even seen, you know? But it was
no, an artist taking artistic license.
right. But he was seen as, or meant to be, a realist. Like, he based his landscapes on real places, right? And this is not a real place necessarily. So this one does mark a bit of a shift, though, because it was later in his life, and it was kind of towards this was post-Civil War era, and kind of the feeling of America had changed some. So this kind of has an edge of the world feeling to it, and especially with the tribes. So this is a depiction of the Salish tribes. I got to click on the right window. Or the Salish tribes. They're going out to seas. You see, they're coming back from sea, because they hunted. I think these guys hunted whales and stuff too.
And they still do,
off of the coast.
Have
Yeah.
that federal license where it's like, go kill whatever you want in the ocean. It's fine.
Yeah. So the darkness and the finality of the ocean kind of gives an edge of the world feeling, which is contrary to like the open expansiveness of Yosemite or of the Sierra Nevadas. This has a kind of a definite end.
It's very much the kind of like the striking of the sea represents like the end of the manifest destiny period.
Yeah, I agree. And this was after, this was right as they were establishing the Transcontinental Railroad. So westward expansion exploded during that time. And so while it was met with mixed reception, but it is a very beautiful painting. It has the trees to kind of guide you towards the light, and then of course the people. So maintaining the elements of the Hudson River School, or keeping that locked down. So with our last actual 6 minutes, we're gonna jump to the last buffalo.
Awesome. Which
and get it to load here. There we go.
Another just fantastic painting.
Yeah. And this one has a lot of depth and meaning to it, beyond just like, oh, Indians fighting buffaloes. So this was painted in 1888. It's 5x8. It was one of his last large canvases because he was getting kind of on in years. By the time he'd painted this, his fame had steeply declined because the will for westward expansion was not as I'm going to say it wasn't as fervent as it was in the 1860s, right? Like the kind of boom, the societal boom for it had shifted. And so the focus of it, so his art, being this grand landscape artist, was not as in vogue as it once was. So this shows, of course, a brave Native American warrior killing a buffalo or fighting a buffalo. We don't know. It's a very tense scene. You don't know if man, like you see the look he's just captured the look on the horse's face, I think, really well.
Yeah. that like, yeah, oh shit moment,
Yeah. And okay, we go try to zoom in a little bit without it being so the focus of the scene is obviously this, this struggle of a time gone by, right? Like this was not something that was as like the buffalo had already started to be killed, right? And this way of life was going extinct. And so you can see there's a lot of buffalo, like there's a big stretching expanse of buffalo, but it ends.
Yeah.
It used to not end. The herds end. And in the front, it's framed by death. So there's all these dead buffalo here, just tons of dead buffalo. And then the herds are ending. So it kind of is a representation of the death of the American West, the struggle of humanity, or the wild, pristine, untouched West. And like kind of the native people who the native people and cultures who had called it their home for so many years.
Well, and not only that, but kind of that the death of the reverence for the land itself is shown here, and it's very much a focusing on basically the struggle of man versus nature here.
Right. And when and it's like I said earlier, the Hudson River School, they shifted. First they fueled expansion, then they fueled conservation. And this was one of the pieces that was like, hey, this was a piece that was meant to be a conservatory piece. It was meant to be something saying, this is I want to preserve this thing that is dying out, or so it doesn't die out. Or maybe just honor it that as it existed, because
and if I remember right, he did 2 or 3 versions of this as well.
He did, and there's a bunch of sketches of it as well. So but I think it was kind of like it was because his last big painting, like kind of like his tribute to the the people that he had only ancillarily included in his paintings through most of his life. And I think it's a really beautiful image. And I thought it'd be a good one to end on, of course, because it was the last one he did, and we go chronologically. So, so yeah, with that, we're at our hour, we hit our hour here. So, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming along with the journey with me, Bleach. This was a lot of fun.
It always is, and just some of the art we cover in here is truly astounding. And Beirstatdt, I think, is definitely one of my personal favorites. I mean, I love landscapes, so I'm definitely going to be going back and looking into some of his work. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just also very kind of that illuminary school or luminous school. I can't remember the correct term.
Uh, um,
It's just so visceral as far as the landscape, which I've done some amateur photography, and that's the exact kind of thing I try to capture. So I love seeing it in art form.
yeah. It's a it's a beautiful thing, and it's a relic of the past. It's a remnant of the past, and it's captured a time that we will never have again. And I'm grateful that he did it.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll be back next week. We're talking about C.M. Russell, the America's cowboy artist, like the OG original cowboy artist, and his life in working in Montana and all that stuff. So we'll be back next week with that, folks. With that, we'll sign off. So
Yeah, it's been a great
Chatelet, folks.
Chatelet.